Thank you, everyone. So thanks for the invitation. Thanks for the organization One Health and Development Initiative for inviting me to talk to this seminar. As you can see from the title, is meat control system in the United Kingdom, lesson to learn. I could be talking on this subject for hours and hours and hours because it's a lot of things, but I'm trying to be brief and concentrate on 25 minutes, okay? I have prepared this presentation with approximately 15 slides, but what I want to do is concentrate on experience. So I'm gonna be talking about our jobs as an official veterinarians and what problems are we finding when we are performing our job. But I'm going to be practical. I'm going to be mentioning when we are describing the different tasks and we're having real cases that we're having. I think with that, we will cover lesson to learn so we can see what is the actual problems that we're facing here. Okay, so let's go ahead. So first things, this is the section that I have divided my presentation. I'm going to do a brief introduction to Evelyn Jones so you know who we are and what we do. We're going to talk about the systems of meat control, what we call here official control. You will see that it's actually quite different than other European countries to compare to similar systems that we had. We're going to mention who are the inspection teams in the meat plants, who is a part of this team. We're going to move, and this is where I'm going to concentrate and talk more about the role and challenges of official veterinarians when they are working in the slaughterhouse, okay? This section is going to be a bit more developed. And then we're going to talk about very popular topic, and you all know about Brexit and export certification, something that official veterinarians had a big challenge since Brexit started 2.5 years ago. I'm going to explain why this has affected that. And then we can have a question and answer section. Okay, so moving on, Evelyn Jones. Look at that. We are a family-owned company. We established in 1993. We just celebrated 30 years of the company. I was one of the I was and I am the first employee of the company. I met Mr. Avila and Mr. Jones. They are both veterinarians back in 1994, and I joined then in April 94. So I'll be 30 years in the company in April next year. Okay. We deliver compliance, veterinary and public health solution to the food industry. That's what we mainly do. We've got a team of nearly 1,000 people for 52 different countries. That's a big move from 1984 that we were 3. Now we were 1,000 people. Okay, we are the largest such company in the UK. Okay, we are the provider of official veterinarians to the UK government, to the Food Standard Agency. We will explain this a bit later. We safeguard the welfare of 1.2 billion animals per year. We ensure the meat is safe for consumers. Okay, so this is all our big responsibility that we have. We certify around 15% of the UK export of products of animal origin. As I say, we will talk about this towards the end of the presentation. And we are successfully growing. We are still growing by year. What do we do in Evelyn Jones? I think the best way to describe it is 4 different sections: abattoir or slaughterhouses. We have official veterinarian in every abattoir in England and Wales. Okay. We also do export certification, as I mentioned. We are the biggest company doing export health certification, and I would say we cover 15 or 20% of the export. We do portal. What does it mean? We provide official veterinarian UK board inspection points, so all the meat coming from third countries need to be inspected. So we do this kind of job as well. And we also do a bit of this one, clinic work. We help small community pet clinics to do normal vaccination as well. This is on site as well, but it's part of our functions. Our people, our passion and strength. Look at this. We currently employ 1,000 professionals from 52 different countries. You got a warm up there. You can see from my accent, I am now originally from England. I've been trying for the last 30 years to get rid of my Spanish accent, but with no success. So I'm originally from Spain, okay? We got around 120 people from Spain. It's probably the biggest nationality, whether with Romanian and Turkish now. And then we got, as you can see, from Nigeria as well, and from everywhere, as you can see on the map. We've got around 450 veterinarians, 300 meat inspectors, 100 vets doing export certification, and a management support team of around 100 managers. Okay. Let's move on into meat control official controls. The system in the UK. I think this is important for you to understand. The British government, through the Food Standard Agency, subcontract veterinary companies to carry out the meat inspection. So the government body is the Food Standard Agency. Our official veterinarians work for the private company, in that case, us, because we got the contract with the Food Standard Agency, but we represent the government. When we go and we do our duties in the slaughterhouse, we don't say we are Evelyn Jones. We say we are the Food Standard Agency. We are the official control. We are enforcement officers, okay? This is very important. It's different than other European countries where the governments employ the official veterinarian directly. In this case, the government doesn't employ, but the subcontract companies. But there is no different. Look at this. The meat is not different the way there cannot be conflict of interest, because the meat industry pay the Food Standard Agency the inspection fee, and the FSA pays the veterinary company. The FSA pay Evelyn Jones. So there are no conflict of interest. It's important to say that most slaughterhouses has considerable discount, and the government pays a significant percentage of the cost. Especially medium and small slaughterhouses are subsidized by the government, okay? Let's move on into our inspection teams in the meat plants. So what do we have there to do the official controls, to do the meat controls? So we have obviously the official veterinarian, that is the technical leader, usually is one per slaughterhouse, and they has got all the enforcement responsibility, make sure that the plant comply with the legislation, with the UK legislation, okay? We will develop this a bit later, but just to announce it, the official veterinarian. We also have the meat hygiene inspector, MHI, or we call it official auxiliary, okay? The number of meat hygiene inspector depends on the speed of the line and the throughput. So as we said before, in most of the plants, it's only one official veterinarian. Big plants, probably two, never more than two. A meat inspector can go from 1 to 10 meat inspector in big plants, in big, I don't know, just to put an example, a big plant that kills 5,000 pigs a day, they might have 7 or 8 meat inspector and 2 official veterinarians, okay? So what is an official veterinarian? Let's concentrate on this. An official veterinarian performs works on behalf of the UK government, what we just said before. So we are official veterinarian. Working in the slaughterhouse and meat processing plant. Meat processing plant is mainly cutting plants. We don't do any other meat premises. We don't do meat markets. We don't do butcher shops. We only work in slaughterhouse and meat processing plants, okay? We guarantee the highest animal welfare standard and maintain that all the animals are cared properly and transported safely, 1.2 billion animals per year. This is one of the main roles as official veterinarian, animal welfare. But don't worry, we will talk and explain this further a bit later. Provide technical leadership in plant to ensure the efficiency and constant delivery of official controls, okay? We're technical leaders. We need to have a very good knowledge of the regulation of the technically as a veterinarian, but we also build and manage a relation with the plant operators and management. I will say from experience that the skills that official veterinarians should have will be around 50% your knowledge, your technical knowledge as a veterinarian, but another 50% is your management skills. You cannot go to the slaughterhouse, just tell them, do this, do that, or whatever. That's not the way to do approach. So you need to have personal skill, interpersonal skills, and you need to liaise with the managers to make sure that they comply with the regulation. This is a very difficult part of our jobs. And bear in mind that most of us, we are foreigners. So we got sometimes difficulties to communicate with them, not because we don't have a good English. Sometimes it's because they see us as foreigners, sometimes they don't take us serious, and they try to play with us around. So this makes very important for our veterinarians to have a proper training in interpersonal skills. Let's move on into the official auxiliary or meat hygiene inspectors. What do they do they do post-mortem inspection on visceral and carcass, including sampling for residue testing. So this is the main job. They are with the hands on the knife. They are doing the post-mortem inspection, checking if there is any problems with pathologies, with parasites, and very important, and that's one of the main key issues, is with contamination of the carcass, okay? So doing a post-mortem inspection with the meat inspector, they need to concentrate on these points. They also need to check if the hygiene is maintained during production, because they are on the line, they have the slaughtermen working nearby, and they need to make sure that they are keeping a good hygiene practice while they are dressing the carcass, the animals, etc. They also assist monitoring animal welfare by identifying some injuries. You know that some animals in an ante-mortem inspection might not look anything wrong, but when you do the post-mortem inspection of the carcass, you might identify bruises and broken bones, and that might be caused by a poor animal welfare, and these need to be reported. So it's a very important role for the meat inspector to identify these things. And also helps the veterinarian to keep a good record of official data. What we're talking about here, obviously, when you're doing a rejection in postmortem, you need to record it. So this rejection is because of a pathology. This one was because of contamination, because parasites in a liver. Things like that need to be properly reported and recorded. And this is a very important role of the meat hygiene inspector, okay? Let's move on into our proper job. What do we do when we are in the slaughterhouses? So role and challenge of the official veterinarian. I have divided in 5 main ones, okay? There are some others, but I think those are the most important ones. So I will start talking about the ante-mortem inspection. I will explain what are our roles when we perform ante-mortem inspection. Animal welfare checks, as I mentioned to you, animal welfare is extremely important as an official veterinarian. We need to look after the animal welfare at the slaughter, okay? So I will explain this very well. What do we do and what challenge do we have? Post-mortem inspection, we briefly has mentioned something while we're talking the meat inspector. We will develop this section as well. Hygiene conditions of the process. You won't believe it, how important is the hygiene. I think, I mean, after 30 years working as an official veterinarian, I think I see our role moving from anatomopathology, when you were trying to find pathology in the postmortem, to an auditor and a hygienist, you know, as an official veterinarian, because hygiene in the process create more problems than pathology. Believe me, we have much more problems with the hygiene condition in the practice than finding some pathology in the carcass. So we will explain about that, and we will explain to you how do we do the enforcement. Okay, remember, we are enforcement officers. We need to make sure that they comply with the law. I think it's important at this stage to explain that the responsibility of producing feed meat for human consumption is not the responsibility of the official veterinarian. It is the responsibility of the operators of the plant, or the management of the plant, the owner of the plant. Those are the ones that have to produce feed meat, okay, for human consumption. We are there as a police officer, just making sure that they do it. But responsibility is their responsibility. Very important. That is reflected on the legislation. Responsibility is of the operator. Okay, let's start with ante-mortem inspection. I have recorded cases and we had found when we are performing our duties, but let's start with what do we do when we do an ante-mortem inspection. Very important, animal identification and traceability. You need to know where the animal is coming from. Okay, so in the case of the bovine, they have what we call the bovine passports. So you need to check if the passport is correct, individual passport per animal. You need to check the ear tag that is properly shown on the ear of the animal, that ear tag match with the passport. They explain the origin of the animal, the age, the farm, all those things. So cases, things like that, we have problems. For instance, you are checking and doing an ante-mortem, it comes a cow with an ear tag, you check the passport, different number. So what do you do in that case? You need to to contact the farmer and explain you what this problem. You either provide proper documentation or this animal needs to be killed and disposed. Okay, so that's an example that you have. Food chain information. Food chain information. This is especially in batches like a herd of pigs coming ante-mortem. The pigs need to be identified with a mark, and the food chain information needs to tell you if there been any problem, any animal has problems in the farms, has been any treatment into those animals. All those things need to be recorded in food chain information. And sometimes, not often, we got problems again that we wrong chain information. No, all the information in the food chain sheet is recorded, and we need to contact again the farmer to make sure that this is correct. Notifiable diseases, very important. When you are performing an ante-mortem inspection, you need to make sure that those animals are free of notifiable diseases. We don't have many notifiable diseases. We have 20 years ago a problem with foot and mouth disease that actually was detected in a slaughterhouse by one of our colleagues. So you see how important is ante-mortem. And nowadays, the main thing we have is TB, tuberculosis. But most of the animals, then they are tested positive. They come to a specific slaughterhouse where we kill them and we check all the special documentation that they bring, and we are even more careful in postmortem to find if there are any nodules of TB and needs to be rejected. So notifiable disease is mainly TB, but that's it. Animal residues, you need to make sure those animals that are coming and well, if they've been treated with antibiotics, they needs to be in the food chain information. So you need to look for that one. No many issues in this section. Control of sick and dirty animals. This is very important, especially dirty animals. We don't allow to bring dirty animals to the slaughterhouse because that compromises the hygiene process. So we are very strict with them. Okay, and we take enforcement action. We might take it even to the point that the animal is so dirty that we might kill that animal and dispose it because the risk for contamination on the line is too high. So it's very important the cleanliness policy bringing animals. Biosecurity and cleanliness of transport is compulsory for any lorry that brings animal. After unloading, the animals need to be cleaned and disinfected at the premises. And the OB needs to see that. We have recently a few examples that lorries left without cleaning and disinfected, and we have prosecuted them. I say you cannot do that because if for whatever reason those animals were bringing whatever diseases, TB or whatever, and they go and you unload healthy animals, they can be contaminated. Okay, very important as well. Let's move on. Animal welfare, as I say, very important. So what do? We discover or detect animals in the full living state. This is common sense. Unwell, agonizing, injured with external wounds, fatigued or excited animals. Okay, something very important to mention here. In UK, it's not allowed to bring any injured animal into the slaughterhouse. Injured to the point that that animal, if you need to move it, will be in pain. So, for instance, a cow with a broken leg, you cannot transport it to the slaughterhouse. You need to, that animal need to be killed at the farm, okay? This is very important. So we need to see if someone has tried to bring an animal that it was injured in the farm and they transported and they took it to the slaughterhouse. That's very important. So you need to see if those animals, when you're doing the ante-mortem inspection, they got problems of chronic diseases and well animals that has been caused by a poor management or handling of the animals at the farm. So this is a big problem and you need to report it, okay? So that means that an official veterinarian for the agricultural department will go to the farm and do an investigation why those animals they're bringing to the slaughterhouse are looking very poor, in a poor conditions. You are not doing it properly in the farm. You need to see if those animals has got problems in the transport, okay? Detect no compliance with animal welfare and transport. See the density of the animals in the transport. There is a required density, so you need to make sure that it's complying. So when they're unloading the animals, you need to see if those animals were crowded in the lorry or they were within enough space, you know? And this is stipulated in the legislation, the space and the density of the animals. You need to see the lorries are maintained properly. If they're not maintained, they might have sharp edges that could injure the animals. So very important as well. And there is something I would like to explain a bit longer, this one, because this is very interesting. CCTV in large and stunning area. This is a new legislation that was introduced 4 years ago. We are the first country in Europe to introduce this legislation, where it is compulsory to have CCTV cameras, closed circuit television cameras in the large and stunning area. So we can monitor the performance of the largeman, the slaughtermen, all those things continuously. So we don't need to be there all the time. We can access this CCTV and do it. And I tell you, since we have this 4 years ago, 70% of the prosecution that we have done related to animal welfare has been detected on the CCTV camera. We have detected that large men were not treating the animals properly. We have detected that the slaughtermen not stunning the animal properly, not sticking the animal properly, and we have removed their license as a slaughterman. Okay, so this is extremely powerful tool that we have as an official veterinarians, and we are very glad that this has been introduced, and that has helped to improve animal welfare big times. Postmortem inspection. Okay, on postmortem inspections, it's carried out by the meat inspectors, as we say, and supervised by the OB. The inspection must be, as you know, visual, palpation, organoleptic, and do incisions to see if there is any lymph nodes enlarged, or if there is an access, and things like that, common sense. Detection and rejection of carcass when you see any pathological problem. Remember, the main ones are pathological, parasites, and contamination, okay? Identify diseases relevant to the public health or animal health as well, things that you might not be able to see in antemortem. Identify contaminated, very important, or residue relevant to public health. So I give you a clear example of the cases that we have here. We have carcasses presented to the postmortem inspection with contamination. Why? Mainly because the slaughterman has been in a rush, and I was doing the dressing and maybe ripped the guts of the animal and split all over the gut contents, so this contamination. So this is typical things. If you have a lot of contaminated animals, you got the power to stop the line and say you either take action to produce carcass free of contamination, or you don't operate anymore. If the problem is only occasional but it persisted, you do enforcement action. You send them a letter, you tell them if you don't improve this, you need to stop production. And I give you a clear example. You are a meat inspector, they present you an animal with a carcass, with an area of contamination, okay? You don't go and trim. First, obviously, you don't wash the carcass. You need to do the trim, but you don't do the trim as a meat inspector. You send it back, and the operator has to do the trim in front of you, remove the contaminated carcass, and then if you are satisfied, you apply the health map, okay? So, not many cases of pathology, few cases of contamination, and a few parasites as well, especially in pigs, ascaris. We have a few ascaris, the famous milk spots we call in liver, but not many issues. Postmortem seems to be going well. We don't have many problems. Hygiene conditions of the process, crucial, very important. So it is compulsory to have a HACCP system in the slaughterhouse. You cannot operate without a HACCP system. So the owner, the management of the slaughterhouse has to produce a HACCP system, and you, as an official veterinarian, need to revise it and approve it. And once you approve it, you need to check it and monitor whatever time you feel that is adequate. So you go there and you need to see that the CCP identify, they are taking all the samples that they need to do. If they are microbiological samples and all of that has got in the hazard, you need to make sure that they are taken, and they need to show you the results. So very important, all the hygiene conditions. I got what the typical cases we have for the hygiene process. For instance, animal products no kept separate, no putting in a container and it's labeled as animal products, condensation and dripping in the chillers. We have cross-contamination, maybe clean carcass touching carcass that they are contaminated. We got problems with the water testing. We got problems with the PPE, the protecting clothing of the operators not being kept clean, with the sterilizers not being kept clean and not at the right temperature. Things like that are the common things that we find, not day to day, but once, twice in some of the slaughterhouses. You also perform an audit, a proper audit, a full day audit of the, I mean, you as an official veterinarian don't do it, but you have a quality-official veterinarian coming to your slaughterhouse and doing a full audit of the procedures of the plant. In this full audit, we will create a score. If it's a good score, you won't do the audit until the next year. But if the poor score, you increase the frequency of the audit, and you might tell them, we need to come back in 3 months to check if you have rectified all the problem we found. So that's another important point as official veterinarian. Enforcement. I mean, everything that we've been talking until now is part of your enforcement. You know, when you take action on something, that's enforcement. That's what you do continuously. So the legislation applies to all meat establishments under veterinary supervision. We've got a very good, clear, detailed legislation that, in fact, is the European legislation. Remember that 2.5 years ago, we left the European Union, but we haven't changed the legislation. We carry on applying the European legislation, and it's very good, very detailed, and easy for an official veterinarian to refer when you got a problem, when you got a question, to see exactly what the legislation say, and you show it to the operator and say, look, you are not doing it properly because you are not complying with the legislation, okay? The different legal actions are taken based on principle of the Food Standard Agency. So basically, we got a team in the Food Standard Agency that support on enforcement, and they tell us, okay, you carry on sending letters, you know, telling them to comply with enforcement, or at this stage, we'll take it on board and we have our solicitors because we are going to prosecute that plan, okay? So that's the way that we operate. We have our enforcement program. In fact, most of the cases I've been telling you during this presentation, I took it from the enforcement program. So we can tell you exactly what are the real problems we have. So we follow our enforcement program. And that's what I said before. We got authority to stop production imminent, if there is a risk for public health. Clear example, a lot of carcass with a lot of contamination. So you press the button, you stop the line, and you call the manager and say, you need to take action now. You cannot carry on producing carcasses unfit for human consumption, okay? Let's move into the last part, because I think I'm talking too much. So let's move into the last area, that is Brexit and export certification. This is actually Brexit, that's my personal opinion, but if you read in the paper, it has been the worst thing happened to the United Kingdom. It's not my opinion, it's general opinion. So it was a big mistake. However, us as an official veterinarians, we're the only ones has benefit, because we had a new role to perform, that is export certification. So basically, this is very simple. Before, we were in the single market of the European Union, so you were producing meat in London and sending to Madrid, and you don't need any paper. It's the same than sending meat from London to Birmingham. London, Madrid, London to Birmingham, no difference. Now, no, UK become a third country. So even if there is a free trade of products between UK and the European Union, but because it's considered a third country, they need a veterinary certification. So all the products of animal of origin needs a vet certificate to enter the European Union. I've been this morning, before coming here, exporting Yorkshire puddings. Yorkshire puddings, they are lovely, they are produced here, and they have milk and egg. So because products of animal origin, they need me. So I've been sending that to Ireland. So I've been doing an export certification, okay? So an export officer veterinarian who facilitate international trade, responsible for accurate completion of the health certificates, and you need to put your stamp there as an official export veterinarian. And you need to inspect the products, inspect the packing and all the certifications, because when you're doing an export of Yorkshire puddings, you need to have, the exporter needs to provide you with a letter from the farm that they are producing the milk, that milk has been treated, pasteurized or sterilized, has come from animals that are free of tuberculosis, all those things. So it's a lot of paperwork you need to compile before you are able to sign this document. And you have to take some evidence for the documentation and take pictures of your export, okay?